The research component of BIP is one of 4 components designed to facilitate government and the private sector to work together to build a better business environment and address Zimbabwe's economic challenges. The component aimed to stimulate the increased production and uptake of business and economic research evidence useful for government and business membership organizations when contributing to policy formulation.
Research is a fundamental tool that actually allows government and business membership organizations to engage. It helps them to look for solutions to address problems that may be existing in the economy. The research component, I like to think of it as the doctor of the BIP program, because if I can just give you an illustration, the economic environment that we work in, or economic policies, if you consider them to be a patient, the business membership organizations or government departments would be the relatives that belong to that patient. The research institutions are the doctor that the patient would go to. So the research component is a component in the BIP program that business membership organizations and government departments come to looking for evidence, looking for solutions that can help them address the constraints that exist in the market.
Zimbabwe has seen considerable economic transformation over the past few decades. And these changes have presented challenges for both government and the private sector, challenges which could be resolved better if there was a culture of using research evidence in decision-making.
In the past, very little was understood about the importance of research evidence to inform policy and advocacy from both government and business.
From the business community, we would see policy submissions being made to government informed by little or no research at all, making it difficult for policymakers to take their submissions seriously to inform policy. Consequently, there was very little traction in policy advocacy by the business sector. Similarly, though, from the government side, we would see policies being introduced today, tomorrow reversed, and perhaps even reintroduced again a week later, making planning for business people and potential investors impossible.
Over the past years, those organizations, they were not taking research seriously in their policy making.
The issue of evidence is about power. So we've had experiences where when you bring evidence to the Minister of Agriculture or Minister of Industry and Commerce, first of all, the departments in those ministries would feel like, why is this evidence coming from outside? We should be the ones who know everything. We have all the information. But then they realize that, okay, there's an evidence side or pieces of evidence that are outside policy that needs to be brought in. So it's still like a negotiating power. It's more like negotiating attention. How do we make KTA provide evidence without departments in the Ministry of Agriculture feeling that they are being challenged or they are being portrayed as if they don't know? So we're still having that kind of situation where resistance to evidence from outside is a big issue.
The world over, evidence is critical for decision making, be it in government or in the private sector. But what we had observed over the years is that that culture of using evidence was still very low.
So when BIP was first conceived, what was immediately obvious was the very limited use of research evidence in policy making and advocacy. So that was the context. What we didn't quite understand was why.
Constraints to this were many, but what we didn't understand what they were at the onset of the program. I've been working on the program for the last 4 years, supporting research institutions and think tanks to advance evidence-based policy making in the country. Over the last 4 years, we've actually been working with business membership organizations, research institutions, government departments, and the media to try and unpack what some of the constraints have been to uptake of evidence in policymaking.
With that background, BIP commissioned a survey to understand the attitudes around the use of research in Zimbabwe, revealing a number of challenges that inhibit government and the private sector from using economic and business research to inform policy decisions.
As a maiden survey into that particular area, it played a major role in terms of conscientizing people and also setting the standards in terms of how things are to be done, in terms of presentation of information, the issue of validation workshops where all stakeholders are involved. And most importantly, it acts as a stepping stone for researchers in the market to use to say, okay, this was done, we can also do this for you. So I think that was critical. It was sort of like the icebreaker, if you may use the term.
We interviewed about 315 organizations across government, business membership organizations, media, research, the whole fraternity, to actually understand what the constraints were. And what we learned was that, first of all, there was very low engagement between research institutions and this particular market segment. Researchers themselves did not see business membership organizations and government departments as a viable market that actually wanted to use research in evidence-based policy making. At the same time, business membership organizations and government departments themselves did not see appropriate products available from research institutions for them to be able to actually use in their policy making.
3 interventions were designed to address these challenges. The first works to build the capacity of research institutions to engage with PMOs, government departments and media as consumers of policy-relevant evidence.
From inception, we have been primarily working with government ministries that are responsible for economic policy management. But with the coming in of IMCP program, we have also intensified working with the private sector. We started off working with the National Economic Consultative Forum, which is a platform that's supposed to generate consensus between the private sector and business. But the issue was how it can be capacitated. So BIP facilitated carrying out of a SWOT analysis for them. Then we have also worked with the Confederation of Zimbabwean Industries, CZI. We have also worked with the Council for Tourism, Hotel Associations of Hospitality Association of Zimbabwe. We have also worked with them. So these are some of the private sector players that we have worked with because of the facilitation of the IMCP program. It has created an opportunity, one of enhancing visibility of ZIPARO as an institution in terms of the work that we do, and enhancing the relevance of that work through responding to the needs of the particular institutions. If you look at, for example, the NECF, it has created an opportunity of a strengthened dialogue platform of the private sector and the public sector through the initial work that we did on the SWOT analysis and going on to do a strategic planning for them, which they are implementing. And I'm happy as an institution we are associated with that kind of work. But it has also broadened opportunities to work with other players, even in government, that we have not been directly working with. We have been working with economic ministries, but in this intervention we've also been working with the Office of the President and Cabinet in assisting them in some of the work that was being supported by IMCP.
It's easy to know each other and not work properly, but now because BP has been there more like an intermediary trying to connect us. Sometimes the BP as an outsider, they were good at identifying different skills. It's difficult for you to know your skills, but an outsider can realize that. So one of the roles of BP has been identifying people who have similar skills who probably don't know how to work with each other. In that case, we've been able to work with ZIPARO, and we generated a number of outputs, especially research in the agricultural sector. We've had several highlights, but maybe to pick a few ones. The first one was to engage with media on a consistent basis. BP has brought media, the formal side of media. Given that we work in the informal market, people don't associate informal markets with knowledge or good ideas. So coming in of BIP has been very useful in that regard, because we then have to bring in the media, formal media. We've had a good relationship with media, coverage in mainstream newspapers and televisions. We didn't used to be interested in being noticed or being visible to outsiders, or we were a bit on the, I would say, shy side. We didn't want to be known a lot. We felt by being known you're a lot more like bragging. But because BIP said to us, no, you see, you are doing interesting work. Even the journalists say to us, please, this needs to be known. So from that angle, we are now more accessible. We are now more interested to talk to many journalists or different types of people.
Since we started working with BIP, we have seen that gradually now starting with the government itself and some business management organizations such as CZI, ZNCC and some NGO, they are now taking, or they are now coming on board to interact with research and think tanks such as Department of Economics, whereby there's an appetite now of doing their policy making using research-based evidence analysis, and I'm sure I think there's a positive now trend in that direction. So, but I believe going forward, I think there will be more and more of such uptake by government and other departments.
Before the coming in of BIP, Probe was more of a one-stop shop in terms of, we had this perception we could do everything, from conceptualization of the research to commissioning of the research, to then doing the reporting and then presenting the findings. But I think after working with BIP for the past 4 years, we've come to appreciate that there are people that are involved, or institutions that will be involved in the whole research process. People that will do infographics, for example, tend to present the information far much better, that is user-friendly in the end. So it is that appreciation, and then appreciating that we can do research without necessarily having all the skills being housed within Probe. We can then outsource consultants to be able to come in and work with us to be able to achieve what it is the client wants to achieve, and that has increased the positive turnout for bids, because we can say we've become more successful and more precise in terms of bidding and getting results. We have worked with institutions that represent the tourism industry, institutions that represent the bakeries in Zimbabwe in terms of what it is that they want, and institutions that represent industry in general, in terms of, in some cases, designing from scratch and implementing the research, and in some cases assisting in professionalizing the way certain aspects of research like data collection is done. In terms of its influence on the wider research market, is it has managed to get various private research institutions to be able to work together in one research, and that was something that was like a maiden in this country, and I think when it comes to issues of policy, sometimes different institutions need to join hands or join forces, and to create a product that is required. And that I have noticed it is a trend. A lot of institutions like the World Bank tends to encourage through joint ventures. They tend to encourage that because they realize there's no one institution that will be sort of like a one-stop shop. So the issue of joint ventures or people working together was something that was new to the research market in Zimbabwe, and it was done well.
The survey also revealed that there was low innovation around business and economic research products that could be useful to BMOs, government, and the media, further constraining the use of evidence in policy making. This market segment, for instance, wanted research that was tailored specifically for them, had simplified messages, was easy to read and digest, had clear computations of the pros and cons, impact and opportunities when selecting one policy direction over another. But research institutions were not aware of this. The second intervention therefore sought to address this constraint.
There was a very poor attitude around research products because business membership organizations, the media, government, all these who we assume to be users of research, they could not find products that were appropriate for them. What we discovered in the research that we did was that this particular market segment needed very simplified products. We worked with about 7 research institutions, and over the course of 4 years supported them to innovate around the products that they develop, innovate around the ways that they actually communicate research to a public audience.
We have worked on, as I said before, on the issue of formalization of the informal sector with the Ministry of Industry and Small Industry and Commerce, Ministry of Industry and Commerce, small to medium enterprises. We've also worked on partnership research with other research agencies in Zimbabwe. We have also worked on projects with the World Bank locally in terms of the informal sector and the micro and small enterprises in Zimbabwe, which we have also done in some parts in the region also. Like Zambia, we have worked with the World Bank and we are currently working with them. Then obviously we have worked with the tourism sector, the bakery sector, and the industry in general in terms of measuring capacity utilization.
We have worked with BIP where we did a policy brief in which we summarized major recommendations from a number of studies which were funded by BIP, close to 16, and that policy brief was sent to Parliament which they also went through as they were doing their policy making, especially with regards to 2018 national budget. They considered and also they took that policy brief when they were doing their meeting in Victoria Falls.
We also had a product, our economic barometer, which working with some of the consultants which were sponsored by IMCP, we managed to restructure the barometer to become more relevant, more user-friendly as you read through it. So those are some of the things that have happened in terms of changing the work that we've done. Is actually improving on the quality of the products. We've also developed other products like policy briefs, which policy briefs is just summarizing the issues but focusing on the policy aspects for the policymakers who are in general very busy.
We did a market barrier study together, and then we did another one that focused on small grains, which is a very important commodity in Zimbabwe.
In addition, constraints identified in the use of evidence in policymaking related to the accessibility of relevant research. Research outputs were not very visible, nor were they disseminated in a way that was useful for users, thereby limiting the potential for research to impact policy. The third intervention was developed to bridge this gap.
There was very low visibility, or at least a perception of a very low visibility of research institutions. A number of people did not even know where to go to commission research. So if they wanted to understand a particular economic problem, they didn't even know where to go to find these research institutions. They didn't know where to go to find research outputs. So you will find that there are products that actually exist on the business environment from a research perspective, like the economic barometer, like the manufacturing sector survey. These are just a few of the products that exist on the market. But the users themselves didn't even know where to go to access these products. And so another intervention that BIP actually came in on the market with was around dissemination of research products. We worked with a number of institutions and helped them to discover new ways to create a platform whereby their research could actually be shared much more publicly to a broader audience. So one example was of dialogue series that we supported research institutions to have, which allowed a platform whereby researchers and government ministries, business membership organizations, and indeed also the media could actually interact and absorb the findings of the research so that they could inform their decision making. Another intervention that we did around the issues of disseminating of research also was on supporting research institutions to get comfortable with the idea of using innovative communication tools such as Twitter, to get comfortable around interacting with media so that they could actually share their research outputs on a media platform as well.
Our interaction with the BIP has been has been an avenue through which, as a Department of Economics and a think tank in economic issues, we have become more and more visible. As I have said, on 3 August we had our national conference which BIP helped us in terms of funding, and we were there in the newspapers, and also the national TV was covering us. We have presented in all our joint activities with the National Economic Consultative Forum, so we have appeared in their forums and also participated, which I think to me it's some of the areas in which we have become more visible than before.
There are a number of changes that we have made through, I think, lessons learned from other experiences in other countries and the trainings that have been facilitated by MCPIP. Firstly is the whole issue of packaging. You have done a piece of research, good findings, but if it's not packaged properly for the appropriate audience, then the relevance of the document will be missed. So I think in terms of packaging, we have also had now the introduction of infographics, which makes the study more simpler. You're just highlighting the key findings. For those people who have time deficit, they don't have enough time to be looking at this, they just want to read it in a go. But we have also had other modes of disseminating our findings through the website, through social media, Twitter, Facebook. And this has happened because of some of the trainings that we have had, and also being shown some experiences from other countries.
In addition to social media, our traditional social media and mobile phones, why don't we have knowledge cafes that we are bringing on board? So we've lined up knowledge cafes with the BIP support, and we are still organizing content to say what kind of content will be spoken about, what makes a knowledge cafe different from an ordinary conference. So there have been quite a lot of experiences around all these ways of communicating evidence. But most importantly, we find that policymakers in the form of members of parliament or portfolio committees in parliaments, they are not users of evidence per se, but we're having to call them in now to say, how do you use this evidence? So it means the ball is on us to say, how do we package evidence in a more proper way so that it becomes usable? It means even time, where you're going to put a 30 minutes video, maybe you need a 2-minute one or a 5-minute video so that people can probably access it. Because that's one thing. It's one thing to generate evidence, but then to get it being used and embedded in policies is quite a lot of work. But we think we're making some strides on that one.
Over the last 4 years, BIP has seen that good decisions that result in growth of the private sector and sustainable revenue for government can only be taken when there is good engagement between the public and private sectors. BIP has facilitated the production and dissemination of relevant, appropriately packaged research evidence for use by policymakers. This has seen increased and more frequent use of research as a tool to lubricate engagement between policy actors.
IMC BIP has also provided a platform where it has also created an appetite even within the business community to say, as they are doing their decision making, they also need research. Currently, yes, there are challenges where they cannot commission research themselves because of the challenges that are currently there. And I think the support that IMC BIP has provided a window, and hopefully going forward, the business membership organizations, they'll begin to demand that research in their own right and be able to fund, because they've realized the relevance of research in their decision making.
The need and the appetite for research within the public sector and within institutions like business membership organization has grown. I think the fears those institutions, whether true or false, had, they've been allayed over the years, especially as they begin to take, what stakeholders say into their decision making, and basically, I think their work has been made easy, because instead of them trying to think what it is they should include in their policies or in their in running their institutions, the people that are affected by the same institutions are the ones who are telling them, what is needed and what needs to be done. And basically that is research, to find out what people feel and say, and to get that information to the relevant authorities so that they can make plans that are effective.
It's an opportunity. They are starting to appreciate the importance of evidence-based research in their policy making. So we believe that it's an area where there are vast opportunities of interaction between such departments or government and business management organization, as well as versus think tanks and research institutions such as our department. So in short, I see more opportunities going forward. BIP has a good and positive impact in that now its association with various institutions, but specifically with the Department of Economics, in that wherever we were presenting or in these national forums in our presentation, BIP was recognized, but more specifically that they've supported a number of evidence-based research, which is good for the country and policy decision making going forward.
We have seen an increase, like I said, in demand for the work that Zimbabwe is doing by now a diverse group of institutions. Even with the institutions that we have worked with before, we're now beginning to get repeat business. So going forward, and with this, within this context of the new era of Zimbabwe, where government is focusing on the revival and transformation of the economy, we see the research coming from our institution being demanded more. And I think it creates an opportunity for strengthening the partnerships that we have worked with. And we are also hopeful that IMC BIP will also continue to grow in terms of their programming, in terms of responding to the demands of diverse organizations. For example, if you look at the work that we have done with the Confederation of Zimbabwean Industries on value chains, for example, it's an area that they have said is a strategic area. They've identified about 18 value chains. We've only worked on one. And I think the demand for that work is even much greater, given that government seeks to revive and strengthen the value chains.
Over the lifetime of the BIP program, we've really seen research acting as a neutral basis for people to come together, to dialogue on issues and chart the way forward from a fact-based perspective. At the end of the BIP program, it was envisaged that research institutions would be able to recognize the commercial value of government and business membership market segments to produce tailored research products and inform dialogue and influence policy. The last 4 years have been a journey, and the traction BIP has made in getting government and the private sector to engage and use evidence in decision-making is accelerating.